You may have seen the news headlines recently about a big real estate lawsuit that was just settled. The settlement is probably the biggest bombshell that has hit the real estate world for literally decades. It has the potential to have a huge effect on how real estate transactions are accomplished in this country. The biggest segment of people that could feel that bombshell the most are home buyers. So it's super important for you to know the facts and not just the way that the news is presenting things, of course. So I'm going to roll that intro real quick and then we are going to get into it.
All things real estate and all things real estate.
Let me give some background real quickly. The lawsuit I'm talking about is the one that hundreds of homeowners brought against the National Association of Realtors, which is NAR. The home sellers were fighting the National Association of Realtors against what they said was price setting. The seller said the standard 6% was unfairly set and that they shouldn't have to pay that. Now let me explain what the standard 6% is real quick. In the past, home sellers have usually paid 6% realtor fees to sell their homes. The 6% is split between the listing agent and broker and the buyer agent and broker. That's 3% for the listing side and 3% for the buyer side. That's what's been typical. But the lawsuit says that that 6% wasn't negotiable, which was the most confusing thing to me because it has always been negotiable. Regardless of what I think though, now that practice is changing and it's going to negatively affect buyers. Why? Because this lawsuit could result in home buyers having to pay their own real estate agent when they go to buy a home instead of it being paid by the seller. And this actually might sound good in theory, right? I mean, when I've explained this to people, some are like, yes, that's fine. Let the home seller pay for their realtor and let the home buyer pay for their realtor. But the devil really is in the details with this issue. Let me explain some reasons why this could be really bad for home buyers, especially for first-time home buyers. I'm going to talk about home sellers in a different video, by the way. Today, I'm just laying out the issues for home buyers. Here we go. Okay, so number one, imagine this. You're scrolling realtor.com, you've been thinking about buying a home, and you see one that day that catches your eye as you've been scrolling. What do, right? You contact a real estate agent and say, hey, I'd like to go see this property, and you're excited. Normally, that agent says, great, and you set an appointment to go. After the settlement goes into effect in mid-August, buyers are no longer going to be able to contact an agent and simply go see a house. Let me say that again. You won't be able to just contact an agent and go see a house. Why? Because according to the settlement, if a realtor goes and shows you a house without a buyer representation agreement, it's a violation of our licensing. Gone are the days of, let's go tour this house for fun. And that brings me to number two. This relates to the house tour, but is a separate issue. Let's talk about what's required before you ever enter a house to see it. A signed buyer representation agreement is now required before going on a property showing. Why is that? What is that? It's an agreement between you and a realtor that you're going to work together through the home buying process to get you a home. That might sound okay, but do you really want to obligate yourself to a random realtor before you spend any time together to see if you're a good fit? In the past, when I have a potential home buyer, I'll take them out on a few showings before we ever talk about buyer representation. That's so that I can make sure I want to work with them. Some of my criteria are probably pretty similar to yours. Are the buyers on time? Are they advisable? Do our personalities kind of mesh? You know what I mean, right? You don't know if you want to work with a certain person right off the bat. But this new rule about looking for homes kinds of forces you as the buyer and me as the agent to make a pretty quick decision about that, because I can't just open a door and show you a home anymore. It's going to have to be something that we talk about before I ever turn that key in the lock to open it for you. Okay, so on to number three. Not only does the buyer representation agreement have to be signed and agreed to, but also what has to be in that agreement is compensation. To me, this is the worst part for buyers and for real estate agents. Like I talked about before, in the past, the home seller has typically offered a certain percentage of compensation for the buyer agent because we're bringing the buyer to buy your home. It's typically 3%. It could even be 2.5% or 2%. So in the past, buyer agent representation agreements were usually signed by referring to what the seller was offering that buyer agent. But now, here's the thing. We can't talk about the seller compensating us in the buyer representation agreement. Not only does it have to say how that agent is getting paid in the buyer representation agreement, it cannot refer to the home seller providing that payment. So not only will buyers have to enter into a written agreement with a realtor to even see a house, but they also have to agree to pay that realtor a certain amount within that agreement, right off the bat. This whole thing just makes me crazy because this is not the way I would want to buy a house either if I wasn't an agent. My mantra has always been treat others the way that I want to be treated. And in this case, as a professional realtor, I'm not going to have that choice. And you as a buyer are going to have to immediately obligate yourself to pay a certain amount of money, not only A, to see a home, but B, also to potentially work with this agent. And how much are you going to be ready and willing to pay right off the bat? This issue is crazy to me. And I'm hoping that as we go into the practice of what this settlement means, that changes somehow, because I just don't think it's fair to either the realtor or the buyer to have that immediate obligation, not only for representation, but also for what the person is even going to make, and that the buyer has to obligate themselves to pay it right off the bat. Okay, so let's talk about number 4 on the list of issues with the settlement, and that is the compensation itself and why that's really bad for home buyers. Let's look at actual numbers for a minute. I'm going to call this issue 4A actually, because this is related to first-time home buyers, and I'll talk about other move-up buyers in a moment. So 4A is for first-time home buyers. A typical house price for a first-time home buyer in these days and times is $400,000. A typical buyer agent commission on 3% of $400,000 is $12,000. What if, as a result of this lawsuit, the sellers decide not to pay any of that buyer agent commission? Are realtors going to work for free? No, of course not. No matter how much we love our clients and what we do, like I do, we are still professionals, and we still have families to support and bills to pay. So are first-time home buyers going to pay for their own agent to represent them at 3% at $12,000 for a $400,000 house? They're saving for a down payment. They're looking at closing costs. They're looking at inspection fees. And then are they also going to save that amount needed to pay to be represented by a professional of $12,000? And let's just say for some reason their representative agrees to only make a 1.5% of $400,000, which is still $6,000. This is why I'm saying this settlement has really affected the first-time homebuyer segment, because this is a bad deal for them. It's hard enough to get into a house these days with rates being what they are and with the lack of listing inventory. Then you add a big hurdle of all this money for commission for a good agent to represent them, right? This is not good. So now let's go on to what I'm calling issue 4B. It's still compensation, but it's for the move up buyer, okay? When you want to move up into a new home from your current home, the new home is going to be more expensive, right? 98% of the time or something is going to be more expensive. So you're not only going to be paying a commission on your home sale, but now you're also maybe paying a commission on your home purchase. Whereas before, you sell a home, you pay the real estate commissions for both your agent and the buyer agent. That 3% you normally would have paid as a home seller for your home sale would be a lesser amount than what you may now be expected to pay for your home purchase, if that makes sense. It might be confusing, so let's talk about it in round numbers for a minute. I'm going to give you a scenario. You're selling your house for $450,000, right? $450,000. 3% of $450,000 is $13,500. Okay, so that's what you'd pay your listing agent. Before, in today's world in NAR, you would have paid the buyer agent commission the same amount. Then in today's world, you wouldn't pay a buyer agent commission when you buy the next home. But now, as of mid-August, you are potentially going to be paying a buyer agent commission on your more expensive purchase. You see what I'm saying? So as a home seller, you may save that buyer agent commission. But then as a move-up buyer who's buying, say, a $600,000 house, you may very well have to pay that buyer agent commission. And guess what? That's more money for you. Instead of paying 3% on $450,000 to sell your house for the buyer agent commission, which is $13,500, Now the settlement may have obligated you to pay 3% of $600,000, which is $18,000. This is a cost to you as a move-up buyer. So that NAR settlement isn't good for move-up buyers either. I'm going to talk in more detail about how this affects sellers in a different video too. It's just hard to talk about move-up buyers without talking about the home sale. But let me just say one thing briefly about the home seller in this move-up scenario. What if you have a hard time selling your house? You originally don't offer a buyer agent commission, but then you decide you need to in order to get more buyers through the door in order to get your house sold. So then in that scenario, do you pay 3% to the listing agent, 3% to your buyer agent for your house sale buyer agent, and then another 3% to your own buyer agent for your own home purchase? Think about that for a minute. That would cost you a lot of money on every side. Again, I'll get more into that in my home seller video about this NAR settlement. But oh my gosh, that would be really terrible, right? To get hit from every side of the commissions. That would just be such a mess and would cost you a lot of money. Okay, I've got one more issue that I want to talk about this NAR settlement real quick. Here, thanks for sticking with me through this video. I know it's a long one, but there's a lot to say. Okay, so on to number 5. The number 5 issue is just the basic uncertainty of the situation, right? Uncertainty makes everyone nervous. It's not good for the housing market. And I hate that home buyers have this uncertainty that exists. And I've been really honest with my clients right now about this because even I, as a real estate broker, do not know how all this is going to shake out. I just don't. No one does. And if they tell you they do, they're lying. It is an uncertain world in real estate right now. It really is. And as of this recording, it's June of 2024. My advice to you is if you are in the market to buy a house right now, get it done. Get it done in the next couple months while sellers are still offering that typical buyer agent commission for you. Because after August, we will just have to see what happens. Real quick too, we're almost at the end here, but I do want to say something about the 3% commission rates. I've been a real estate agent for 13 years and a broker for 3. Commissions are always negotiable. Always have been, always will be. I do not understand that part of the NAR lawsuit saying that the 6% amount for sellers was forced. It literally makes 0 sense to me. Yes, commissions are negotiable. I always believe that you get what you pay for though. You are probably going to have to pay a good agent a full 3%, depending, of course, on the price of your home. I personally have taken 2.5% on higher price listings because that amount was enough for me to make it make sense business-wise. Anyway, I knew if I did this whole video, and I've been talking about the 3% the whole time, I would get pushback from people saying, you really do charge only 3%, like that's what you have to have. Yes, that is typical. But nothing is set in stone and is negotiable. Always has been, always will be. Okay, that's all I got for you today. I know that was a long one. Thanks again for sticking with me through it. There was a lot to say about that NAR lawsuit. It's been coming for a while. Lots of important issues and important stuff to discuss and lots of changes in the real estate market. If you are a home buyer and want some more info on how this might affect you, please do not hesitate to get in touch. I am passionate about real estate, as I'm sure you can tell from my videos, and I would love to help in any way that I can. So hope to see you next time in another video. Bye for now.